Hello BookTube, my name is Kate and this is my channel Chapter Kate. Today I'm bringing you a very special video. This is a collaborative video where I've asked several booktubers and I've had several booktubers volunteer to provide a clip of them recommending a book that has mental illness representation or mental health representation, depending on the terminology that you prefer. Everyone in this video is an amazing advocate and I appreciate having their voice so much. Every time someone is honest about mental illness and mental health, it diminishes the stigma and it helps the world to become more accepting of it as a normal, because it is. And I believe that books give us such amazing insights into different disorders, different ways of thinking, different cultural aspects that impact how somebody experiences mental illness, and of course our understanding of it. To start off the video, I'm going to be talking about my recommendation. I have several on my shelves that could work for this video, and personally I did want to do one that is something I relate to. So I do have bipolar disorder and I have post-traumatic stress disorder. I've collected quite a few books that have bipolar disorder representation in them, and I'm still working on trying to dive more into post-traumatic stress disorder representation. But for now, we're going to be talking about Wild Awake by Hilary T. Smith. This book is about a girl who is in the beginning stages of developing a mood disorder. In the book, she exhibits a lot of symptoms that are indicative of a manic episode or a hypomanic episode. And honestly, I found this book to be so relatable. There are some things, of course, I didn't like so much about it. There is the premise that an older sibling has died and that caused what she's going through, which I've found in so many books that don't really require a trauma to manifest, that they still use that same trope. But honestly, I related so much to this book. The main character's name is Kiri. She's in a band. She plays synthesizer in her band, but she also plays classical piano, and her sister has passed away. Throughout the book, she learns more details about her sister's death after a man calls and says that he has her sister's stuff. Against her better judgment, she meets up with this man, she gets the stuff, and she starts becoming more and more curious and learning more and more things about the situation. Also, throughout the book, you can see symptoms of mania starting to manifest. She's increasingly euphoric, creative, and impulsive. There are a couple of scenes in the book where she would just go to a store and start buying all these random items, and I related to that so much because when I am manic, buying stuff is my biggest weakness. I once spent $400 on a straightener. I would buy random stuff. I'd buy squishies, I'd buy books, I'd buy notebooks, I'd buy all kinds of things, and I spend a lot more money than I need to. So I definitely related to that, and I also related to the fact that she didn't want to come down from that high that she's experiencing throughout the book because it gives her so much push for her creativity. And that's one really difficult thing with people who have bipolar disorder. A lot of us are extremely creative people, and we find that when we're manic we're able to do so much more, and that when we're not, it's really difficult. And that's also why a lot of people with bipolar disorder come off of their medications. I will say, if you're looking for an arc that includes treatment and recovery and things like that, you're not going to find it in this book. If you kind of want insight into what it's like before you're medicated with something like this book does wonders for that. And honestly, I did really enjoy it. Now stay tuned for some recommendations from some of your favorite booktubers.
Hi, my name is Cece. I'm from the channel Subscription Box Addict, and the book that I would like to recommend, it's The Love Letters of Abelard and Lily by Laura Creedle. This book roughly is about two teenagers falling in love. It's just following their relationship, basically. So there's no like major plot. We have Lily, who has ADHD, and we have Abelard, who has Asperger's. And these two are going into a relationship, and what I really liked about it is it was kind of a fluffy romance in a way. I'm usually not the person who's just like for the romance or something, but it really broadened my horizon. It was very well described in like out of their perspective, how they're experiencing these mental illnesses. I have to say that I have not had the same outlook on ADHD after reading it, because I could never grasp it in a way that this book was able to portray to me. So I believe this is an own voices for ADHD, so I totally appreciate it. It broadened my horizon. It was still a fluffy kind of read. It didn't feel so heavy, so it's a really good book for like in between like this heavy stuff, and you can still take something away from it, and that is what I really appreciate about this book. I hope you have a lot of fun with all the other recommendations, and maybe I'll see you over on my channel at any time soon. Bye!
Hi, I'm Jen, and my channel is The Bookish Ginger. The book that I'm Here to recommend today is Without Merit by Colleen Hoover. This book is about a young girl named Merit who has a very large family. She feels like she's basically watching from the sidelines while everyone else lives their perfect, happy little lives, and she's just there. Nobody really pays attention to her unless she does something wrong. Then one day she meets this guy. She finds out that is very unavailable to her, and she just gets to this point where she can't handle the happiness of her family anymore, and she decides that she's going to leave them behind for good. When this plan fails her, she's left with the consequences, and it is absolutely crazy, the stuff that goes on in this book. One of the reasons that I've really enjoyed this book is because I personally was able to relate to Merit on a very personal level, and I could see myself in her. This book does deal with depression and suicide, and it can be very emotional, and I just loved it so much. I read it in a day because once I started reading this, I could not put it down because I could see myself in Merit as a character. I was very much that child in a larger family. I have 3 brothers, and I was very much that child on the outside looking in. Nobody really paid much attention to me. And I really wish I had had this book when I was in high school, because I had a lot of feelings that when I was reading this, I just thought it would have been really nice to have something like this, because I could see myself in this, and a lot of the situations that Merit found herself in were very similar to how I was feeling when I was in high school. So I just loved it so much because of that, and 100% recommend this book. It is amazing, and Colleen Hoover's writing style is just addictive, and she does a wonderful job showing depression and suicide in this book.
Hey guys, my name is Alana from The Awkward Book Nerd, and the book that I think has really good mental health representation is Tiffany Sy Lives Here Now by Dana L. Davis. It's essentially about a girl named Tiffany whose mother has just died, and so she is sent to go live with this father that she has never met or heard of before. So she moves in, and she realizes that she doesn't really fit in with his family. First of all, they are very religious, which she doesn't really identify with. He's also very strict, and she just she's not really used to that. And then also she is from a less privileged neighborhood in Chicago, and she just moved to this extremely privileged neighborhood and school in California. So that is also a very big difference for her, because she just went from a predominantly all-black school to a private school that is predominantly white. It's a struggle for her to adjust to this new lifestyle, but as she's adjusting, this new guy comes forward claiming that he could also potentially be her father. While dealing with all of this, she also struggles with anxiety and OCD. The reason why I chose this book, and I think that has such good representation, is because it talks a lot about how she goes to therapy, but she also takes medication for her anxiety and OCD, and without them she really struggles and spirals. And there is even a point in this story where she, for a specific reason, she doesn't have her medication, and she starts spiraling so fast, and it drives home to a specific character why medication is so important for those who need it. Yes, you can definitely have a mental illness and decide not to take medication because you don't want to, and that's okay. But there are definitely people who take medication who need it, and it's valid, and that's okay too. And so I love that this book drives home that whether you take medication or not, your mental illness is still valid, and you are no better or worse than anyone else.
Hi guys, my name is Melissa, and I'm from the channel The Bookish Babbler, and the book that I'm going to be recommending today is The Little in Line by Brandy Colbert. Essentially, this book is a standalone contemporary following a girl named Little, well, her nickname is Little, who is recently coming home for the summer after spending the school year away at a boarding school after her her stepbrother is diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And it really is talking about the importance of therapy and medication, and how medication can be really helpful, and even if it does sort of change the way a person acts because they are able to control the hormones changing in their body. And it's really about what it is like to cope with someone you love having bipolar disorder, and it is really explores how difficult that can be, but also how amazing that can be, and sort of the strength needed in order to be someone who lives with or is really close to someone who is bipolar. And that is one of the many things that I loved about the story. The story has a lot of diversity outside of just the mental illness rep. A ton of people of color in this story, including our main character, who is also grappling with the fact that she is bisexual and she's also Jewish, and it's about having a white stepfather and stepbrother and all of the questions that that brings up in her everyday life. But it is truly at the core of it, this story is about this brother and sister dynamic and them coping with the fact that the brother now is bipolar, and I think it really accurately captures what it is like to have someone really close to you who does suffer from bipolar disorder. And I think it's an incredible book, and I really loved it. It made me cry and feel a lot of things, and it is an excellent book, and I really recommend it.
Hello, my name is Vendela. I'm from the channel Pinforia, and the book that has meant the most for my own mental health is The Memory of Light by Francisco X. Stork. It follows this teenage girl, Vicky, who tries to commit suicide. However, she's found and sent off to a hospital for a few weeks. And at the hospital, she meets these 3 other teenagers who also suffers from various different mental illnesses. Together they go to a therapy group with this wonderful counselor. It's so funny, one of the characters calls it Gripe to Heal, which I think is so accurate, by the way. And you simply fall in love with all of these characters while getting to know their most inner ugly selves. It's so heartwarming, and I really felt like I was there with the characters when I read it. Another thing I love about the book is that it focuses on finding a place in the world where you can breathe, where you can live. And it does this without oversimplifying it. It isn't like, oh, just stay positive and everything will work out. No. It's very real and authentic, and it has so many great metaphors for depression and suicidal thoughts. And I listened to it on audiobook, and it was ridiculous how many times I needed to stop it to write down my quote. Seriously, in the beginning I think I needed to stop it like every 10th minute or so.
Greetings, my name is Kerry, my channel is called Kerry Louise Reads, and today my mental health recommendation for you is Notes on a Nervous Planet by Matt Haig. This is half memoir, half advice book about Matt Haig's own struggles with anxiety and depression over recent years, how the modern world affects his mental health, and tricks and tips he's learnt to help him cope with modern life. So he has a background, as I've said, of anxiety and depression. He's written about that openly, both on Twitter and in a previous book called Reasons to Stay Alive. And he also references those topics in his novels, which often have the main characters as a sort of outsider who's trying to find their way in the human world. And this is based on his own experience of how depression makes him feel. So the one that particularly represents as well is called The Humans. So I really recommend checking out his novels as well if you're interested in mental health being well represented in novels. This is, as I say, more of a memoir, but it also contains sort of advice of how he has been affected in the modern world, particularly things like the internet, social media, and how he's responded to that and how he's used those things to help him but how they also have made her more anxious. It's also filled with little snippets of self-help, so I just opened on this page here, which says, remember, feeling you have no time doesn't mean you have no time. Feeling you are ugly doesn't mean you are ugly. Feeling anxious doesn't mean you need to be anxious. Feeling you haven't achieved enough doesn't mean you haven't achieved enough. Feeling you lack things doesn't make you less complete. It's full of little snippets like that, and some great insights into how the modern world can have an effect on our mental health from someone who's experienced that from themselves. So I really recommend this book and any of Matt Haig's books for great mental health representation.
Hi there, I'm Andrew from the channel Middle Shelf, and I would like to recommend The Someday Birds by Sally J. Pla. This is a middle grade book about 12-year-old Charlie who is on the autism spectrum and also has anxiety. His dad, who is a war journalist, got injured in Afghanistan and is in a hospital all the way across the country. In this book, Charlie and his family and a strange woman they've barely met named Ludmilla have to get in an RV and go on a cross-country trip to see Charlie's dad in the hospital. This is a complete disruption to Charlie's routine and everything that he knows in his life. And the one thing that he can hold on to is his Someday Birds list. This is a list that he and his dad made together of birds that they would want to see someday if they ever got the chance to go birding. As they travel across country, Charlie tries to see these birds, thinking that maybe if he can tell his dad that he found all the birds on the list when they get to him, it will make him feel a little bit better. I absolutely love this book. It has Own Voices autism representation, which is something that I very rarely see anywhere. It tells a really great story about Charlie learning to cope, growing closer with his family, and just going on a fun road trip. And in addition, we find out that the character of Ludmilla survived the Bosnian War as a child, and we learn more about her past, which I think is really, really fascinating. Overall, this book is really heartwarming and moving and really, really fun, and I love it. It's one of my favorite books of all time.
Hey everyone, my name is Yasmin and I'm from the BookTube channel Yasmin the Reader, and the book that I wanted to talk about today was The Rest of Us Just Live Here by Patrick Ness. Now this is an incredibly quirky book. It is very weird plot-wise, but for me it is the characters in this book and also the really well done mental representation in this book that made me fall absolutely in love with it. In this book we follow a character called Mikey, and Mikey is just trying to get through the last few weeks of high school, but there are really weird things happening around him. There are people with blue eyes, there are zombies, and Mikey realizes that the popular kids of high school are trying to deal with this situation, so he is just trying to survive every single day leading up until the end of his schooling years. Now Mikey suffers from OCD and anxiety, and this is why I absolutely loved this book, and it's because of the fact that these two mental illnesses were represented really, really well. I fell in love with Mikey and his struggles. I found his mental illnesses to be really powerful. They came across so strongly in this book and they just felt so real to me, and I really connected to Mikey because of that. There is one particular scene in here that absolutely broke me when Mikey fell into an OCD spiral and he was getting so frustrated at himself because he knew that he didn't need to keep doing this action, but he just felt so compelled to keep doing it. And he had a really supportive best friend in this book that I absolutely loved, and I loved that his best friend was just there for him during his OCD spirals and his anxiety attacks, and I just felt the relationships between all of these characters in this book was done so well. They all respected the fact that Mikey was dealing with some personal issues. Like I said, the plot is incredibly quirky and incredibly different, but for me it is the characters and the mental representation of this book that made me just fall absolutely in love with it. I really, really enjoyed it, and it is just such a powerful book for me. I just loved how well the OCD and anxiety was portrayed in this book, and like I said, you really do feel Mikey's pain within this book and watching him struggle through his mental illnesses. I highly recommend that you go and check out The Rest of Us Just Live Here both on Goodreads or Book Depository. Just give this one a go. Patrick Ness's writing is just absolutely amazing. I really love him as an author as well, and this was just such an enjoyable read for me.
Hi there, my name is Rhiannon and I'm from the channel Crescent Moon Reads, and today I want to recommend to you A Tragic Kind of Wonderful by Eric Lindstrom. This is a story that follows Mel Hannigan, who is a teenager dealing with bipolar disorder, which is also the mental illness I deal with. And while I really, really want to find a good Own Voices YA book about a character with bipolar, this was also a really good representation despite not being Own Voices. This story follows Mel as she compartmentalizes herself and and distances herself from her relationships in order to try and keep her bipolar disorder a secret, because she's dealing with her own internalized fear of how she might turn out, who she could be, how she could be judged, because people in her family deal with this illness and she sees what happens to them, and that is a real struggle for people who have the illness. So it was really real to read. As well, Mel feels like a 3D fleshed out character who has hopes and dreams and likes and dislikes all outside of her illness, which is so important. People with bipolar disorder have the illness, it doesn't have them. It isn't who they are, it isn't our identity. So that was really important to me to see in this novel. As well, I just really felt like this book didn't have an agenda to tell people with bipolar disorder how to deal with it. It was a story that we could relate to. It didn't feel like being told how someone who doesn't even deal with the illness feels I should deal with it, which sometimes it does feel like when I read other books with bipolar characters in them. Everyone seems to have their own opinions, but at the end of the day, there is no one-size-fits-all treatment for people with mental illness. Everyone needs to carve their own path. So I really appreciate stories that I can relate to and feel seen in without feeling like it's trying to prescribe a certain type of treatment to me or reduce me to only my illness. So I really highly recommend this book, and I hope you'll pick it up, and thank you so much to Kate for having me.
Hey y'all, it's Brody from the channel @2Brody, and today I am here to talk to you about Exit Pursued by a Bear by E.K. Johnston. This book follows Hermione Winters, who is in her final year of high school. She is captain of her cheerleading squad. Everything is just, going great. And then at cheer camp, on the last night, at a party, someone slips something into Hermione's drink and rapes her. The story after that, it follows Hermione and having to cope with everything that, rape, sexual assault, all of that entails, because it's not just the action, it's everything after that, and how this thing really does affect you so deeply. It deals a lot with triggers, Hermione, PTSD, stuff like that. It's a really heavy subject, but I like how Johnston handled it. I think it was very realistic. This book is so important to me, mainly because of the PTSD representation. It really, in my case, gets it right. How the smallest trigger can, transport you back to the action. How difficult it is to actually get charges pressed in sexual assault cases and rape cases and stuff like that. It's a very realistic story, and yet Hermione is such a badass, and she's a survivor. She does not let this get her down. She does not want this to define her, and it's just an amazing book. And if you choose to read it, then I hope you all will love it as much as I do.
Hey pals, my name is Amy. I'm from the channel Slither Club, and the book I will be discussing is The Half-Life of Molly Pierce by Katrina Leno. This book has dissociative identity disorder. It follows the main character Molly as she tries to figure out the pieces of her life that she can't quite remember, like how she got to certain places or how things have happened, and she meets this boy who is dying, and it kind of just goes from there. I connect very much with the dissociative identity disorder rep in it. I haven't previously read a book with DID rep in it that was as positive as this. A lot of the times it's portrayed as a very negative thing, and so for the first time I saw myself represented in a way that was positive and not psychotic killer-esque, because that's what you normally get. I am super thankful for this book, and I think you should read it. Okay.
Hi, I'm Nicole from A Beautiful Chaos of Books, and I am going to be recommending to you The Goldfish Boy by Lisa Thompson. This is a middle grade mystery with amazing OCD representation. So this follows Matthew, who is a 9-year-old boy who has OCD. His compulsions really centre around cleanliness and being clean and germs. and as a result he likes to watch his neighbourhood from his bedroom. However, one day a toddler staying next door goes missing and he finds himself at the centre of the mystery, trying to find out what happened to this toddler. This is such an amazing mystery, but it also has fantastic OCD representation. I personally suffer with OCD and I have very similar compulsions and obsessions to Matthew, so I could really relate, and I think the representation is done really well. It's also a really gripping, fun mystery. I highly recommend that you check it out.
Hey, my name's Emma. I am from the channel Emma Books, and the book that I would like to recommend to you guys is What I Lost by Alexandra Ballard. This is an amazing young adult contemporary novel about a girl named Elizabeth who enters a residential treatment center for her eating disorder. So this story follows Elizabeth's journey from recovery, flashing back to times in her life where her eating disorder was most prominent, and dealing with the current struggle of being forced into recovery when all she wants to do is revert back to her old behaviors. This book is spectacular for so many different reasons. I've read a ton of eating disorder fiction, and What I Lost is the best in my opinion. Firstly, this is an own voices novel, meaning that the author herself has been open about her own struggle with an eating disorder and gone through recovery, so it adds a layer of authenticity to this novel that a lot of other books lack. Secondly, it's super informational and accurate to current eating disorder research. It talks about a lot of consequences and such of eating disorders, like the heart failure that can occur, osteoporosis and osteopenia, and other consequences which are really ignored in a lot of media about eating disorders, but it's really important to get that information out into the world. So not only do I consider this book to be an extremely accurate portrayal of eating disorders from both my studies in the topic as well as my personal experience with anorexia, it is also really great because it's a book that's focused on recovery. I love that this book covers the hardships of joining recovery and how difficult it really is for people in this position, but it also highlights the strengths, the benefits, and all of the ways that your life can improve when you do begin to manage your mental health. And I think that's super unique. There's not enough books out there that really detail this experience, and I find it like super uplifting and motivational, which I think really should be a main focus of mental health fiction. I also love the way this book includes the family in the eating disorder recovery process, because that's also super crucial, but it examines a really unique dynamic between a daughter and her mother when her mother is sort of fueling her eating disorder and making it more difficult for her to recover, and I just found it super profound and also relatable, and just a story that a lot of people should experience. The only negative about this book is that it has like a very subtle romantic plotline that I didn't care about, but everything about this book besides that is phenomenal. Whether you are someone who wants to have a better understanding of what it is like to live with an eating disorder for your own personal knowledge or to help a loved one, or if you are someone who has dealt with an eating disorder yourself and you're looking for fiction that will really identify with you and make you feel validated in your struggles, I think What I Lost is like the perfect eating disorder book for everyone.
I guess I should have been excited the way most of the other girls were, but I couldn't get myself to react. I felt very still and very empty, the way the eye of a tornado must feel moving dully along in the middle of the surrounding hullabaloo. That is the moment I fell in love with the novel of Sylvia Plath's The Bell Jar. It is a story of her life told in a fictionalized way, and it was written in 1963 and explores her struggle with bipolar disorder, suicidal ideation, and eventual suicide attempt in 1953. And that quote hit me so much because I had never really had a description that so showed the idea of depression and its numbing effect of feeling like everyone else is going around you and you can't react because you feel numb inside. And that is when I fell in love with the novel, because I knew that it spoke to my soul. It has such a beautiful conversational story where you feel like you are in her mind and that you feel like you feel her feelings and that you understand what Esther is going through, even though it is a book that is over 50 years old. And throughout there is a metaphor of the bell jar as a thing that hangs over our lives, and a thing that even though you can have good times and bad times, dealing with mental illness, you'll never be free of the idea that there is something lingering above you, and nothing shows this more than a quote near the end of the novel, and that is, "How did I know that someday at college, in Europe, somewhere, anywhere, the bell jar, with its stifling distortions, wouldn't descend again?" And I get shivers every time I read it because I know that fear so intimately, and I think that it's something that plagues everyone who deals with mental illness. And it's even more potent for me because of the fact that 3 months after the publication of this novel, Sylvia Plath, the author, took her own life. And for me, The Bell Jar will always be a beautiful example of mental illness in its real way that has stood the test of time.
And that's all for this video. I really hope that you enjoyed it, and again, I am so thankful for everyone who decided to participate. If you have another recommendation for a book with great mental illness or mental health representation, please leave it below so we can check it out. And please don't forget to check out the Green Ribbon Book Club. We have a Twitter, and I will post that below. We try to read a book every month or every 2 months that has mental illness representation, and we're still growing. But if you would like more of this junk, subscribe below. Bye!
Tripping over shadows and I'm drowning in the night. I feel the soldiers coming and I'm putting up a fight.